Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the organizers for their kind invitation to today's discussion. I'm going to mostly focus actually on the green bond market as a means of financing projects for the green economy. So for over 10 years now, the green bond market has provided an important conduit for directing financial flows towards critical environmental projects, such as the hydrogen projects being discussed today. In explicitly articulating the use of the bond proceeds, green bonds have raised awareness of climate and environmental issues among a broad range of capital market participants. Creating a new sense of responsibility, green bonds have also put focus on other sustainability dimensions, serving as a blueprint for social and sustainability bonds. So far, voluntary guidelines for green bond issuance have been a catalyst in the evolution of the market. The green bond principles developed in a market-based approach by green bond issuers, investors, and underwriters now constitute the basis of the market segment. They are referred to in numerous green issuers frameworks, in investment criteria of green bond investors globally, and in external green bond verifications, as well as in national green bond regulations and guidelines, India being a case in point. Providing a platform for a continuous, interconnected and equal exchange by market participants is a novelty in both the extent and the intensity of cooperation. In encouraging issuers to be as transparent as possible in a standardized way, the green bond principles ensure that best practice spreads quickly and globally, while allowing for specific approaches adapted to local conditions. Although green bonds have been issued by a number of issuers, and especially multilateral development banks, such as the World Bank, who's represented today, and EBRD, for several years before the launch of the green bond principles. In 2014, the clarity that the codification brought actually helped really move the market to different types of market participants and issuers. For EBRD, with a mandated objective under the agreement establishing the EBRD to promote in the full range of its activities environmentally sound and sustainable development, it has been a particular focus for us since the beginning. But since 2016, under what we term the green economy transition approach, the EBRD has substantially scaled up its green investments, which, combined with technical assistance and policy dialogue, seek to advance the transition to environmentally sustainable, low carbon and climate resilient economies, aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement. A substantial number of these investments have been financed through the over 7 billion euros worth of EBRD's green bond issuance since 2010, which includes the world's first climate resilience bond to cover climate adaptation projects. We also issued a green transition bond, which has become one of the major focus for the market. Greening financial markets and enabling large capital flows to investments that help the green transition is therefore one of our main priorities. Despite exponential growth, with over $280 billion issued in 2020 alone, green bonds still represent less than 0.5% of debt securities issued globally, with most issuance coming from developed markets. Although green bond issuance out of emerging markets is growing, driven by the vast investment needs in green technologies, overall volumes in emerging markets generally, and in India specifically, are relatively low in terms of both the size of the bond market and the economy. Multilateral development banks such as EBRD are committed to accelerate the rate of green bond issuance in their respective countries of investment, including through the provision of dedicated support in helping clients prepare their first green bond issuance in alignment with recognized green bond standards. In doing so, they help to establish the infrastructure at the issuer level that enables them to meet the requisite transparency standards expected by the green bond market, and especially investors, and including reporting on the impact of the investments and on the issuer's broader commitment to sustainability. In India, the securities regulator, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, introduced disclosure requirements for issuance and listing of green debt securities in 2017, which was very much in step with the green bond principles, and thus guiding Indian issuers towards international standards. This is complemented by the publication in May this year by SEBI of its requirement for business responsibility and sustainability reporting by listed entities, which will include mandatory disclosure on emissions from financial year end 22-23. This is important because it provides a context in which the green investments that are funded through green bonds are understood by investors, which helps to prevent one aspect of what is called greenwashing. This is where one or more robust green investments are undertaken and highlighted, including through green bond issuance, but the overall business model of the entity is little changed, and a continued significant level of what may be deemed brown investments undermine the commitment to a credible transition strategy. The term greenwashing can also be understood in terms of the undertaking of green investments that may be deemed insufficiently ambitious, especially in the high emitting and hard to abate sectors of the economy. Until recently, the projects underlying green bonds have therefore substantially focused on climate mitigation investments, and most especially those that could operate in a low carbon environment or better today. As the work of the EU's technical expert group on sustainable finance seeks to underline in their approach to building a taxonomy, we cannot meet our long-term sustainability challenges without substantial improvements towards decarbonization and improved resource efficiency in those key sectors of the economy that are today highly dependent on fossil fuels and which represent urgent technical and economic challenges to achieving the transition towards net zero carbon emissions. For this purpose, significant investments are needed, in particular because many of these sectors are also critical to achieving the Paris goals. After all, electric cars, wind farm turbines, and green buildings all depend on energy-intensive steel and cement production, and the manufacture of both solar panels and batteries for electric cars are at the moment very significant in terms of energy and resource intensity. In identifying climate transition investments to be funded through green bonds, the focus has broadened to projects that finance significant resource improvements in the manufacturing sector, and in particular in chemical, cement and steel production, as well as food production in agribusiness and sustainable land use, in transport systems, and in the construction and renovation of buildings. In the selection of such projects, however, it's important to ensure that they avoid locking in a carbon-intensive asset or process for the longer term. This necessarily excludes new fossil fuel electricity generation. However, in relation to EBRD's transition projects, for instance, we determined that where significant CO2 reductions could be made by switching from old and inefficient oil and coal facilities to gas, this would be compatible with the transition objective if the project employs the best available technology and if there's no feasible alternative for that specific location. It also serves to recognize the marked benefits of gas over solid fuels in reducing emissions of particulate matter and nitrogen oxides. Impact reporting has garnered increasing attention as a means for the green bond market to underline its integrity and credibility, especially as issuers often provide information on future actions envisaged and will only achieve an environmental impact at a later stage when the allocation to green projects takes place. Thus, impact reporting serves to increase capital allocation to environmental sustainable projects, especially as a growing clamor from investors for impact reporting appears to be driven by their own obligations to assess the relative merits of individual green bonds and report to their own investors and beneficiaries. Investors may also be driven by the need to comply with regulatory requirements, such as France's groundbreaking Article 173, the joint agreement of China Securities Regulatory Commission, and the Ministry for Environmental Protection on listed companies' environmental disclosure and recommendations, including those by market and regulatory bodies, such as the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. To enhance the transparency and integrity of the green bond market, a significant effort has been undertaken by the Green Bond Principles Working Group on impact reporting to further develop voluntary guidelines for assessing a project's environmental impact. These are fully available on the Green Bond Principles website. They're created by a working group, which includes issuers, investors, underwriters, and environmental advocacy and advisory groups. And it focuses on the conveyance of key information reflecting the environmental benefits of the assets to be funded by green bonds that are aligned with the Green Bond Principles. The goal is both to reduce the uncertainty for issuers and ensure the timely availability of relevant information for investors and wider stakeholders by agreeing best practice for quantitative and qualitative disclosures of the impact resulting from green bond investment. The harmonized framework for impact reporting, which was published in December 2015, by 11 international financing institutions, contained core principles and recommendations for reporting, as well as impact metrics for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. This served as the starting point for the Green Bond Principles Working Group on Impact Reporting, which aims to develop core impact metrics and guidelines for all 10 Green Bond Principle project categories. So far, this has resulted in guidance for all but one of the project categories. And so core indicators and templates are now also available for water and wastewater management, for waste management and resource efficiency, for clean transportation, green buildings, biodiversity, climate adaptation, and more recently for circular economy projects, with the latter released earlier this year. In recognition that not all green bond issuers may be in a position to report under any proposed core metrics, additional sustainability indicators have been devised for each project category. They frequently centered on the number of people benefiting from the relevant project, and thus focus more on reporting outputs than on impact. This seeks a balance between the drive to enhance the integrity and transparency of green bonds and ensuring that reporting requirements are not so onerous that they preclude a wide variety of green bond issuers from coming to the market. A diversity is, after all, essential if the green bond market is to fulfill its goal of promoting and amplifying the important role that financial markets can play in helping to address environmental issues. Further guidance is set to come from a more official level that will have an impact on the green bond market in the future. Most prominently, the European Commission and its technical expert group that was established in the summer of 2018 are currently working on a taxonomy to indicate environmentally sustainable activities, as well as an EU green bond standard, which all come under the EU's Action Plan for Financing Sustainable Growth. The International Organization for Standardization is also developing a standard.
May I request you to wind up? I'm sorry for the interruption.
Sorry?
I'm sorry for the interruption, but the time is a bit short. So my polite request to wind it up as quickly as possible now.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The hope and aim of these efforts is to unlock beneficial change, to scale up the green bond market, and support green and sustainable finance as a whole. While it's a given that necessary changes on our path to a low-carbon society are initiated in the real economy, financial markets are getting ready to effectively support that change. Thank you very much indeed.